I woke up in a hospital bed that wasn't mine, with the sharp smell of disinfectant burning my nose. My daughter was right beside me, holding my hand, but there was something strange about the way she was looking at me. It wasn't concern. It was guilt. It took me 3 days to discover that, while I was sedated, recovering from a simple surgery, she had drained my bank account, sold my condo, and admitted me into a nursing home without my consent. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 60 years old, and this is the story of how my own daughter tried to steal everything I had built over a lifetime of hard work. But before I continue, check if you are already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. It all started with a pain in my knee. Nothing serious, just some arthritis that had been bothering me for a few months. My doctor, Dr. Reynolds, who has been treating me for 15 years here in Chicago, recommended a simple arthroscopy. He said it was a routine procedure with a quick recovery, and I would be back home in 2 days. I explained everything to my daughter, Harper, over the phone. She lives in New York City, and I live here in Chicago, so we don't see each other as often as I would like. "Mom, you can't go through that surgery alone," she told me, using that worried tone I knew so well. "I am going to ask for a few vacation days and come stay with you." I was happy. Harper was always too busy with her job, her boyfriend, and her life. Having my daughter close, even if only for a surgery, warmed my heart. She arrived 2 days before the procedure. She was 32 years old, beautiful, and always well-dressed. She worked in digital marketing, or at least that was what she told me. She brought flowers, took me out to dinner, and we talked about everything, except for the things that really mattered. On the day of the surgery, Harper was by my side when I was wheeled into the operating room. I remember holding her hand as the anesthesia began to take effect. "Relax, Mom, I will handle everything," she whispered. I smiled, feeling safe. My daughter was there. What could go wrong? I woke up not in a few hours as I expected, but 3 days later. The first thing I noticed was the confusion in my head. It felt like my brain was stuffed with cotton. My legs felt heavy, and my mouth was dry. I tried to call out to someone, but my voice came out weak, almost inaudible. A nurse appeared, young with a professional smile. "Mrs. Vance, it is so good that you are awake. How do you feel?" "What happened?" I asked, still trying to organize my thoughts. "Why am I so confused?" "You had a reaction to the anesthesia. We had to keep you sedated for longer than normal, but everything is fine now." A reaction to the anesthesia? That made no sense. I had undergone other surgeries before and never had any issues, but I was so tired, so disoriented, that I couldn't question her. Harper entered the room right after, with that same strange look I mentioned at the beginning. It was worry mixed with something else, something I couldn't identify. "Mom, you gave me such a scare," she said, kissing my forehead. "The doctors said you had complications. Your heart raced during the surgery. They had to stabilize you." "Complications? My heart?" Dr. Reynolds hadn't mentioned anything about cardiac risks. I tried to ask questions, but Harper changed the subject quickly. "The important thing is that you are okay now. You have to rest. I will take care of resolving everything while you recover." "Resolving what?" I wanted to ask, but the words wouldn't come out. My eyes closed again, and I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The following days were a blur. Nurses came in and out. Harper was always nearby, but never alone. Sometimes a man in a suit was with her, smiling at me but never introducing himself. I tried to ask who he was, but my tongue felt too heavy to form complete sentences. "It is just the attorney looking over some documents for you, Mom." "Nothing to worry about," Harper would say, patting my hand. "Attorney? What documents?" I hadn't asked for any attorney, but before I could protest, another wave of drowsiness would wash over me. Later, I discovered they were medicating me with sedatives far beyond what was necessary. They kept me docile. They kept me quiet. They kept me incapable of asking questions. When I was finally able to stay awake for more than a few hours at a time, I realized something was very wrong. I asked Harper for my purse. "I need to see my cell phone. I need to call a few people." "Mom, your phone broke. You dropped it when you had the complications. I bought you a new one, but I am still setting it up." She showed me a cheap device, a prepaid burner phone, completely different from the smartphone I had. For now, use the hospital phone if you need to call anyone. Something in her tone alerted me. Harper, what is going on? Nothing, Mom. You are recovering. It is normal to feel paranoid after surgery. The doctors said this might happen. Paranoid? She was calling me paranoid. I tried to sit up, but my body was still weak. I want to speak with Dr. Reynolds. He is no longer in charge of your case. After the complications, we called in a specialist, Dr. Sterling. He is excellent. Dr. Sterling. A name I had never heard, a doctor I had never chosen. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I was too weak to fight, too weak to ask the right questions. So I did the only thing I could do in that moment. I observed. And the more I observed, the more I realized they were deliberately keeping me in a state of dependency. The medication doses were too high. The visits were controlled. Harper said I wasn't well enough to receive anyone. My phone was broken. My documents were being organized. My home was being taken care of. On the 5th day, a different nursing assistant came into my room. She was older, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. Her name was Brenda, and she would be the first person to treat me like a human being and not an incompetent patient. Mrs. Vance, you look very good today, she said while checking my vitals. How do you feel? Confused, I admitted. And tired. Very tired. Brenda frowned while looking at my chart. Let me see here. She examined the medications they were administering. Her face turned serious. Mrs. Vance, they are giving you a lot of sedatives. More than what would be normal for recovering from an arthroscopy. Finally, someone saw what I was feeling. I knew something was wrong. I am going to speak with the attending physician. This isn't right. She patted my shoulder. You are a 60-year-old woman who had a simple knee surgery. You shouldn't be this sedated. But when Brenda left the room, Harper was in the hallway. I saw them talking. I saw Harper's face turn red, her gestures becoming abrupt. I saw Brenda step back, shake her head, and walk away quickly. The next day, Brenda was no longer on my floor. When I asked about her, they told me she had been transferred to another unit. That was the moment fear truly set in. My own daughter was doing something to me, something bad, and she had enough power to silence anyone who tried to help me. On the 6th day, I finally managed to convince a nurse to bring me a telephone. I called my best friend, Margaret, who lives in the same condo building as I do, or rather, in the same building where I used to live. When she answered, her voice sounded strange, hesitant. Eleanor, my God, are you okay? Harper said you had a severe stroke during surgery and that you were going to be in the hospital for months. Stroke? Margaret? I didn't have any stroke. I had a reaction to the anesthesia, but I am fine. Actually, I am half confused because they are giving me too many drugs. But, Eleanor, are you sure? Harper seemed so worried. She said you weren't well, that you had mental confusion, that the doctors recommended you stay in a specialized clinic after discharge. Specialized clinic? My heart skipped a beat. What clinic, Margaret? I don't know the name. She just said it would be better for you. Eleanor. She emptied your condo. She said you could no longer live alone, that she was going to sell the property to pay for your treatments. The room spun around me. She did what? I saw the moving trucks 2 days ago. I tried to call you, but Harper said you still couldn't receive calls. Eleanor, what is going on? My hands were shaking so much, I almost dropped the phone. Margaret, I need your help. Don't say anything to Harper, but I need you to come here. Memorial Hospital, room 412. But don't let anyone know. After hanging up, I sat on the bed and tried to process what I had just heard. My condo. The apartment I bought with my own money after 25 years of working as a math teacher and then as a school principal. The home that represented my independence, my security, my future, emptied, sold, without my consent. Harper entered the room at that moment, carrying a Tupperware container. I brought you some homemade meatloaf, Mom. I know you don't like hospital food. I looked at her. I really looked at her, trying to see the little girl I raised alone after her father abandoned us when she was 5. The girl I took to school on the back of a bicycle because we didn't have money for the bus. The girl for whom I threw birthday parties with homemade cakes because we couldn't afford a bakery one. The girl I helped pay through college, working 2 jobs so she wouldn't have to go into debt. But all I saw now was a stranger with my daughter's eyes, but with a heart I didn't recognize. Harper, what did you do with my condo? She froze. For a second, her mask slipped, and I saw something that looked like guilt, but then she composed herself. Mom, we already talked about this. You agreed. I didn't agree to anything. I have been sedated for the last few days. You signed the documents before the surgery, don't you remember? She took a folder that was on the chair. Everything is here. Power of attorney. Authorization for the sale of the property. Appointment of temporary legal guardianship due to your health condition. I took the papers with trembling hands. And there it was. My signature. But I didn't remember signing any of that. When did I sign this? The day before the surgery. You were nervous, remember? I said it was just a precaution in case something happened. I forced my memory. The day before the surgery, Harper had taken me out to dinner. We had drunk wine. Quite a bit of wine, now that I thought about it. She had told me something about documents, about being cautious. I had signed some things, trusting her. My daughter. Why wouldn't I trust her? This is fraud, I whispered. You made me sign this without me understanding what it was. Mom, you are confused because of the medications. You knew exactly what you were signing. I was trying to protect you. Protect me by robbing me of my home? Her voice became colder. I didn't steal anything, you gave me authorization. And frankly, Mom, you are getting older. 60 years old, living alone, refusing help. It was only a matter of time before you had another health issue. Someone had to take the reins. Another health issue? As if arthritis in the knee was a sign of dementia. I want you to return everything. Now. I can't do that. I already sold the condo. The money is being used to pay for your treatments. She leaned closer. Mom, you have to accept that you can no longer live alone. I found an excellent assisted living facility for you. Nice view, qualified staff. You are going to like it. Assisted living? Harper, I am 60 years old. I don't need a nursing home. Dr. Sterling disagrees. He believes that, given your condition, you need specialized care. What condition? I had knee surgery. She sighed as if she were dealing with a stubborn child. Mom, you had a stroke during the surgery. It affected your cognition. Dr. Sterling documented everything. The confusion, the paranoia, the baseless accusations. They are classic signs of cognitive decline. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. She was constructing a narrative. A story in which I was a confused old woman, incapable of caring for herself, who needed to be institutionalized for her own good. And she had a doctor. Documents, evidence, all falsified, but apparently legitimate. Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why are you doing this to me? For a moment, I saw something real in her eyes. Desperation, perhaps, or greed. Because I need it, Mom. I have debts. A lot of debts. That marketing job I told you I had, I lost it 6 months ago. They are evicting me from my apartment in New York. My credit cards are maxed out. And you have a paid-off condo in Lincoln Park. You have savings. You have a fat retirement fund. So that was it. Money. My daughter was robbing me for money. You could have asked me for help. And would you have given me enough? I doubt it. You have always been so controlling with money, Mom. Always saving for the future, never enjoying the present. Well, I have bills to pay now. And you aren't going to need all that money in a nursing home, are you? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. It was Margaret. Thank God. Harper turned around quickly, putting a worried expression on her face. Oh, you must be one of my mother's friends. How kind of you to come visit her. Margaret looked at me, then at Harper. She is sharp, my friend. She worked as a social worker for 30 years. She knows how to recognize a bad situation when she sees one. Eleanor, how are you? Margaret, thank God. I need you to. My mother is a little confused still, Harper interrupted. The doctor said it is normal after the stroke. She might say things that don't make sense. Margaret ignored Harper completely. She walked up to my bed and held my hand. Eleanor, are you okay? Are they treating you properly? No, I replied, my voice steady despite the fear. They are over-drugging me. My daughter sold my condo without my real consent. She is trying to put me in a home. Margaret, she is robbing me. Harper turned red. Mom, you are delirious again. I am sorry you have to see this, she told Margaret. Like I said, the stroke affected her cognition. Eleanor doesn't seem confused to me, Margaret said coldly. In fact, she seems quite lucid, even more lucid than she should be if she really had a stroke. You aren't a doctor, Harper retorted. No, but I worked with hundreds of stroke patients, and Eleanor doesn't present any of the typical signs. Margaret turned to me. Eleanor, do you want me to call someone? A lawyer, perhaps? Yes, I replied immediately. Please. Harper stepped forward. You have no authority here. I am my mother's legal guardian. Any decision goes through me. Legal guardian? Margaret arched an eyebrow. Based on what? A power of attorney you probably obtained fraudulently? The tension in the room was palpable. Harper and Margaret looked at each other like two animals about to fight, and I, trapped in that bed, still too weak to get up on my own, prayed that my friend wouldn't give up. Margaret didn't give up. She left that room and returned an hour later with someone who would change everything. Her niece, attorney Sarah Bennett, a lawyer specializing in family law and elder guardianship. Sarah was about 35, with short hair, modern glasses, and an expression that clearly said she didn't take nonsense from anyone. She walked into the room with an air of authority that made even Harper take a step back. Mrs. Eleanor Vance, she said, extending her hand. I am attorney Sarah Bennett. My aunt told me about your situation. I need to ask you some questions, if you are willing. Please, I replied, feeling hope for the first time in days. Harper tried to intervene. She is not in any condition to speak with lawyers. She is medicated. Then I am going to speak with the doctors about that medication, Sarah said without looking at her. Now, Mrs. Vance, can you tell me what happened? From the beginning. And I told her. Everything. The simple surgery that turned into days of sedation, the documents I signed without fully understanding, my sold condo, the plans to put me in a nursing home, the doctor I never chose, the excessive medications that kept me docile. Sarah wrote everything down on a tablet, occasionally asking specific questions. When I finished, she turned to Harper. I want to see all the documentation, the power of attorney, the medical evaluation, the sales documents for the condo. Now, I have no obligation to show you anything, Harper said, but her voice trembled slightly. Actually, yes, you do. Your mother just hired me as her attorney, and if she has the mental capacity to do that, then she has the capacity to question your actions. So, the documentation, please. There was a moment of standoff. Then Harper took the folder she had brought earlier and threw it on the table. Everything is there, all legal and correct. Sarah examined the documents with attention. Her lips thinned with every page. This power of attorney is very broad. It gives you total control over all your mother's assets, and it was signed only one day before the surgery. She agreed. Harper insisted. Under the influence of alcohol? Sarah raised her eyes. Because according to Mrs. Vance, you drank quite a bit of wine that night. A glass or two. A bottle and a half, I corrected. You kept refilling my glass. Sarah returned to the documents. And this medical evaluation from Dr. Sterling, diagnosis of vascular dementia and severe cognitive decline, based on a 20-minute consultation? She looked at Harper with disbelief. This diagnosis normally requires multiple exams, neuropsychological evaluations, imaging studies. Dr. Sterling is highly qualified. I am sure he is. I am going to request an independent evaluation, and I am going to ask the hospital to review Mrs. Vance's medication immediately. Sarah turned to me. With your permission, I am going to file for an emergency injunction to suspend the power of attorney and block any additional transactions involving your assets. Please, do it, I replied, feeling tears of relief run down my face. Harper turned pale. You can't do that. I am her daughter. I have rights. You have rights, yes, Sarah nodded. But you don't have the right to financially exploit your mother. And that is exactly what seems to be happening here. Harper looked at me with a mixture of rage and desperation. Mom, please, you know I only want what is best for you. If you wanted the best for me, you wouldn't have robbed me, I replied, my voice firmer than I expected. Leave, Harper. I don't want you here. For a moment I thought she was going to argue, but then she grabbed her purse and left the room, her heels clicking down the hallway. As soon as she left, I broke down. Margaret held me while I cried tears of rage, of betrayal, of relief for finally having someone on my side. Sarah waited patiently until I composed myself. Mrs. Vance, I am going to be direct with you. This is going to be a battle. Your daughter has documents that superficially look legitimate. We are going to need to prove she obtained those documents fraudulently, that you were under the influence when you signed them, and that there is no real medical basis for her allegations about your mental capacity. I understand, I said, wiping my tears. I am willing to fight. Perfect. Step 1. I am going to get an independent psychiatric evaluation. I need a specialist who can attest that you are fully capable. Second, I am going to request your complete medical records, including everything related to this surgery. I want to know exactly what happened and why they kept you sedated for so long. Third, I am going to investigate this Dr. Sterling. If he diagnosed dementia based on a 20-minute consult, something is very wrong there. In the following days, everything happened quickly. Sarah managed to get my medication reviewed. A new doctor, chosen by me this time, examined my case and drastically reduced the sedatives. For the first time since the surgery, my head began to clear. The psychiatric evaluation was performed by Dr. Patricia Joyce, a respected professional with more than 20 years of experience. She spent a whole day with me, applying tests, asking questions, evaluating my memory, my reasoning, my comprehension capacity. At the end, her verdict was clear. Mrs. Vance, you are at the peak of cognitive capacity for your age. There is no sign of dementia, cognitive decline, or memory loss, beyond what would be expected from someone who was kept under heavy sedation for several days. You are fully capable of making your own decisions. I cried with relief hearing that. Not that I doubted myself, but hearing from a specialist that I wasn't crazy, that my daughter had lied about everything, validated everything I was feeling. Sarah used that evaluation to file for an emergency injunction. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Meanwhile, she discovered things about Harper that broke my heart even more. My daughter hadn't just lost her job 6 months ago. She had been fired for embezzlement. Small amounts, nothing that justified a criminal prosecution, but enough to be fired and blacklisted in the industry. She had credit card debts totaling $150,000. She had overdue personal loans. She was literally bankrupt. And that was when she met Jason Miller, an unscrupulous real estate agent who had his own history of questionable practices. He was the one who gave her the idea. Sarah discovered this through WhatsApp messages she managed to subpoena. Does your mother have a condo in Lincoln Park? How much is it worth? $800,000? Damn, you are sitting on a gold mine. The messages continued, outlining the whole plan. Convince me to do the surgery. Make me sign the power of attorney while I was relaxed with wine. Get a doctor to sign a fake dementia diagnosis. Keep me sedated long enough to sell the condo quickly. Put me in a cheap nursing home, pocketing the difference. The condo had been sold to a shell company controlled by Jason. They planned to wait a few months, resell it on the market for full price, and split the profit. Estimated profit, more than $400,000. It was fraud, an elaborate, cruel fraud perpetrated by my own daughter against me. The hearing for the injunction was in family court. Sarah had prepared me for what to expect, but even so, my heart was racing when I entered the room. Harper was already there, sitting next to a lawyer she had hired. She didn't look at me when I walked in. The judge was an older man, about 65, with gray hair and a serious expression. Judge Harrison, according to the plaque on his desk. He studied the documents in front of him for a long moment before beginning. So, he said, taking off his glasses, we have a quite serious family situation here. Mrs. Eleanor Vance alleges that her daughter, Harper Vance, obtained control over her assets fraudulently. Miss Harper alleges she acted in good faith to protect her mother, who was suffering from cognitive decline. Correct? Both lawyers confirmed. Very well. I want to hear from Mrs. Vance first. I stood up, my legs still a little shaky, but my voice firm. I told my story once more. The simple surgery that was supposed to be routine. The days of inexplicable sedation. The documents I signed without fully understanding. The condo sold without my real knowledge. The attempt to put me in a nursing home against my will. When I finished, Harper's lawyer stood up. He was a young man, very polished, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Your Honor, Mrs. Vance is, understandably, confused about the events. She went through a complicated medical procedure. She had an adverse reaction to the anesthesia that resulted in temporary cerebral hypoxia. The doctors documented episodes of confusion, paranoia, and memory difficulty. Which doctors? The judge asked. Dr. Sterling, the specialist who took over the case after the complications. We have his complete evaluation here. He handed some papers to the judge. Judge Harrison examined the documents with attention. This evaluation was done when? 3 days after the surgery, Your Honor. And lasted how long? The lawyer hesitated. The consultation lasted approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes, the judge repeated with a flat voice. And based on those 20 minutes, this Dr. Sterling diagnosed vascular dementia and severe cognitive decline? He also relied on the daughter's accounts of the mother's behavior in the previous months. I see. The judge turned to Sarah. Attorney Bennett, do you have anything to present? Sarah stood up with confidence. Yes, Your Honor. I have here the evaluation from Dr. Patricia Joyce, a geriatric psychiatrist with over 20 years of experience, who spent a whole day evaluating Mrs. Vance. Her conclusion is categorical. Mrs. Vance does not present any sign of dementia or cognitive compromise. She is fully capable. She handed the report to the judge, who read it attentively. I could see his eyebrows raising at some points. Furthermore, continued Sarah, I have here the complete medical records of Mrs. Vance's surgery. Dr. Reynolds, her primary physician, confirms that the procedure was routine and without complications. There was no stroke, no cerebral hypoxia, no adverse reaction that justified keeping her sedated for 3 days. The judge looked at Harper's lawyer. Attorney Carvajal, do you have any explanation for this discrepancy? Your Honor, different doctors can have different opinions. This isn't a matter of opinion, the judge interrupted him. Either there was a serious medical complication, or there wasn't. Dr. Reynolds was present during the surgery. Dr. Sterling was not. Who should I believe? The lawyer had no answer. Sarah seized the moment. Your Honor, there is more. We gained access to messages exchanged between Miss Harper and a Mr. Jason Miller, a real estate agent. In those messages, it becomes clear that there was a deliberate plan to assume control of Mrs. Vance's assets. She handed over printed copies of the messages. The judge read them, his face becoming increasingly serious. I couldn't see what was written, but by Harper's expression, I knew they were damning. Miss Harper, the judge said finally, would you like to explain these messages? Harper stood up, her face pale. I was worried about my mother. Jason is a friend who advised me on how to take care of her. Your mother is sitting on a gold mine, the judge read from one of the messages. That doesn't sound like maternal concern. It sounds like greed. I didn't mean. We need to act fast before she changes her mind, he read another. Keep her medicated until we resolve everything. Miss Harper, this is much more than concern. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. The silence in the room was deafening. Harper opened and closed her mouth several times, but no words came out. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm, trying to calm her. Judge Harrison took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. A gesture I had already learned meant he was making a decision. I am going to be clear about what I see here. I see a woman of 60, cognitively lucid and fully capable, who was manipulated by her own daughter. I see documents obtained in a questionable manner under the influence of alcohol. I see a fabricated medical diagnosis. I see messages that reveal a deliberate fraud plan. He turned to Harper. Miss Harper, did you have financial problems? She nodded slightly, unable to look at him. And did you view your mother's assets as a solution to those problems? Another nod, almost imperceptible. I understand. He put his glasses back on. Here is my decision. I am annulling the power of attorney immediately. Mrs. Eleanor Vance resumes total control over her assets. I am ordering the immediate suspension of the sale of the condo until a full investigation is conducted. If the sale has already been finalized, it will be reversed. I am also referring this case to the district attorney's office for investigation of possible fraud and financial abuse against an elderly person. Harper let out a sob. Her lawyer held her shoulder, whispering something I couldn't hear. Additionally, continued the judge, I am issuing a restraining order. Miss Harper, you are prohibited from contacting your mother or attempting to access any of her assets. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. He banged the gavel. Next case. Outside the courtroom, I collapsed into Margaret's arms. It was over. I had won. My daughter could no longer rob me, but the victory had a bitter taste. Because in the end, I had lost my daughter in the process. Sarah was radiant. Mrs. Vance, this went better than we expected. Now we have to work on recovering your condo. If the sale was to a shell company, as we suspect, it will be relatively easy to reverse it. But I was barely listening to her. I watched Harper leaving the courthouse, her shoulders slumped, her walk unsteady. She seemed so small, so defeated. Part of me, the part that was still a mother, wanted to run to her, hug her, tell her everything would be okay, but I couldn't, because nothing would be okay. She had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and some betrayals cannot be forgiven, no matter how much love still exists. The criminal investigation moved faster than I expected. The prosecutor assigned to the case, Attorney Fernanda Roach, was a woman of about 40 who seemed to have a personal mission against crimes involving the exploitation of the elderly. Mrs. Vance, she told me in our first meeting, I see cases like yours too often, children who view aging parents as ATMs. What your daughter did is a felony, and I will make sure she answers for it. She and her team reviewed everything, every message, every financial transaction, every document, and the more they dug, the more rotten the situation became. Jason Miller, the real estate agent, had a record. 3 previous cases of suspicious real estate transactions involving seniors. He had never been prosecuted because the victims were truly incapacitated and the families had given up investigating. But this time would be different. Dr. Sterling was also investigated. It was discovered that he had signed other questionable diagnoses in the last 2 years, always involving elderly people whose families needed documentation to take control of their assets. Always quick consultations, always severe diagnoses, always a generous fee paid in cash. He is selling diagnoses, Fernanda explained to me. It is a systematic operation. He generally receives between $5,000 to $10,000 for each fraudulent evaluation. I felt nauseous. My daughter had paid $10,000 to a corrupt doctor to falsely diagnose me with dementia. $10,000 to steal $850,000. In her head, it was an investment worth making. While the criminal investigation advanced, Sarah worked on the civil process to recover my condo. The sale had been made to RTS Developments LLC, a company that only existed on paper. The nominal owner was a straw man, a 68-year-old man who lived in a tenement and who, according to his testimony, had received $500 to sign some documents without knowing what they were about. The company had sold the condo to another, LLC, Palmer's Investments, which, surprise, was controlled by the same Jason Miller. They planned to hold it for 6 months and then sell it on the open market, splitting the profit with Harper. It is a classic scheme, Sarah explained. Several layers of shell companies to make tracing difficult, but they all lead back to the same place. With the court order, we managed to block the sale before Jason could transfer the property. My condo was frozen pending the outcome of the process, but that meant I couldn't go back home. Technically, the property was in legal dispute, and even if it weren't, there was nothing there anymore. Harper had sold or discarded all my furniture, my clothes, my belongings. 40 years of life thrown away like trash. Margaret took me into her home. "Stay as long as you need," she insisted. "You are my best friend. I am not going to leave you without a place to stay." I accepted, grateful, but I hated being a burden. At 60 years old, I should be living independently, not depending on the charity of friends. It was during that period that I began to really process what had happened. The trauma of waking up in a hospital and discovering that your life has been stolen. The betrayal of realizing that your own daughter, the girl you raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for, saw you only as a means to get money. I started having nightmares. I dreamt I was trapped in that hospital room, eternally sedated, while Harper sold piece by piece of my life. I would wake up sweating, heart racing, needing several minutes to remember where I was. Margaret suggested therapy. "Eleanor, you went through a trauma. There is no shame in asking for help." She was right. I started seeing a psychologist, Dr. Anna Bravo, specializing in trauma and family abuse. In our sessions, I finally was able to process the pain, the anger, the feeling of betrayal. "It is normal to feel guilt," Anna told me in a session. "Mothers always blame themselves." Where did I go wrong? What could I have done differently? But Eleanor, you didn't go wrong. Your daughter made choices bad, criminal choices. That isn't your fault. But it was difficult not to feel guilty. I had raised Harper alone after her father abandoned us. I had worked 2 jobs to give her a decent life. I had paid for her college. I had helped her with her first apartment. I had been present in every difficulty, and she had repaid me by robbing me. "You gave her love and opportunities," Anna said, "but you cannot control the decisions she makes as an adult." At some point, Harper decided that money was more important than integrity, that her financial comfort was more important than the well-being of her own mother. Those were her choices, Eleanor, not yours. 2 months after the hearing, criminal charges were formally filed. Harper, aggravated fraud, forgery of a private document, financial abuse against an elderly person. Jason, fraud, criminal conspiracy, falsification of records. Dr. Sterling, illegal practice of medicine for making baseless diagnoses, criminal conspiracy, falsification of records. Each one faced 3 to 8 years in prison, plus hefty fines. Harper tried to call me when she was notified of the charges. Sarah had warned me that might happen. "She is going to try to appeal to your emotions. She is going to cry, ask for forgiveness, promise she has changed. But remember, she is only sorry because she got caught." When my cell phone rang and I saw her name on the screen, my hands shook. For a long moment, I considered answering, hearing her voice, giving her a chance to explain. But then I remembered waking up in that hospital. I remembered discovering my home had been sold. I remembered the messages between her and Jason, coldly planning how to rob me. I remembered the corrupt doctor she paid to falsely diagnose me. I let the call go to voicemail. She left a message. I listened to it later that night, alone in Margaret's guest room. "Mom, please answer the phone. I know you are angry, and you have every right. But please, let me explain. I was desperate. I didn't know what to do. Jason said it would be easy, that you wouldn't even notice, that it would be better for you anyway. I know it was wrong, I know. But please, don't let them lock me up. I am your daughter. Please, Mom, drop the charges. We can resolve this as a family, please." Her voice broke at the end, audible sobs between the words. It was the voice of my little girl, of the child who ran to my arms when she got hurt, who called me in the middle of the night when she had nightmares. I cried listening to that message. I cried for my daughter, for the person she could have been but chose not to be. I cried for our relationship, which was destroyed beyond any repair. I cried for the naivety of having trusted her so completely. But I didn't return the call, and I didn't drop the charges. 3 months after this whole nightmare began, I finally managed to recover my condo. The judge presiding over the civil case was quick and decisive. The sale was fraudulent, based on documents obtained illegally, therefore null and void. The condo went back into my name. When Sarah gave me the news, I felt immense relief, but also dread, because that meant I would have to go back to that space, now empty, stripped of everything that made it a home. Margaret went with me the day I picked up the keys again. We opened the door together and walked into absolute silence. The condo was exactly as Margaret had described, completely empty. Not a curtain on the windows, not a bulb in the fixtures, only bare walls and empty floors that echoed our footsteps. I walked through the rooms in a state of shock. The living room where Margaret and I watched movies on Friday nights. The kitchen where I taught Harper to make rice pudding when she was 6. The bedroom where I spent sleepless nights when she was sick. The office where I corrected thousands of math exams over the years. Everything empty, everything dead. I sat on the living room floor and cried. Margaret sat next to me, putting her arm around my shoulders, letting me vent. She took everything from me, Margaret. Not just the condo. She took my history, my memories, my life. No, Margaret said firmly. Your memories are here. She touched my forehead, and here she touched my heart. She took your belongings, Eleanor, but she cannot take who you are. It took me weeks to start furnishing the condo again. Sarah had secured a temporary restitution of $50,000 from Jason's frozen accounts to help me start over. It was ironic using the scammer's money to repair what he had helped destroy. I went to used furniture stores, flea markets, liquidation sales. I bought the essentials first: a bed, a sofa, a table. Every new item was a small victory, a step toward normality. But the house felt strange, as if I were visiting someone else's apartment. Margaret's friends pooled some money together and gifted me a set of pots, plates, and silverware. My former colleagues from the school where I worked for 25 years got together and bought me a television. Neighbors I barely knew showed up with towels, sheets, small appliances. The kindness of these people, many of them almost strangers, moved me deeply. My own daughter had robbed me, but the community around me was helping me rebuild. Meanwhile, the criminal process moved forward. Jason was the first to reach a deal. He confessed everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. 3 years in prison, of which he would serve a year and a half in a closed regime, the rest on probation. He also had to return all the money he had made from the scheme and pay a hefty fine. Dr. Sterling also reached a deal. He lost his medical license permanently, was sentenced to 2 years in a semi-open regime, and had to pay restitution not only to me, but to 3 other victims of his fraudulent diagnoses identified during the investigation. Harper was the only one who refused to settle. Her lawyer believed she had a chance at trial, arguing she acted out of genuine concern for my health, albeit in a misguided way, that the messages with Jason were misinterpreted, that she never intended to hurt me. The trial was scheduled for 6 months after the charges. During that time, I had to decide if I wanted to testify. Part of me didn't want to. I didn't want to face my daughter in a courtroom, tell strangers the details of our family tragedy, relive everything publicly. But Prosecutor Fernando was clear. Your testimony is crucial, Eleanor. You are the victim. The jury needs to hear from you what happened, how you felt, the impact this had on your life. Without you, the case becomes much more difficult. So I agreed. I would testify against my own daughter. Therapy with Anna Bravo helped me prepare. We practiced what I would say, how I would stay calm under pressure, how I wouldn't let the defense attorney rattle me. Remember, Anna told me, you are telling your truth. You don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to explain yourself. Just tell what happened. A week before the trial, Harper tried to see me. She showed up at my building, but the doorman, instructed by Sarah, didn't let her up. She stood on the sidewalk for hours, looking up at my windows. I watched her from above, hidden behind the curtain, seeing my daughter look so lost and desperate. Part of me wanted to go down, talk to her, hear what she had to say. But Sarah had been clear. Any contact could compromise the case. And besides, what could we really say to each other that would change anything? Finally, she left when it started to rain. I watched her walk slowly down the sidewalk, without an umbrella, letting the rain soak her completely. She looked like a figure from a tragic painting, a woman completely defeated by her own choices. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the good memories we had. Harper at 5, drawing pictures for me at school. At 10, winning her first essay prize and running to show me. At 15, crying in my lap after her first heartbreak. At 22, graduating from college, thanking me in her speech for making everything possible. Where had that girl gone? When had she transformed into someone capable of drugging her own mother and stealing everything from her? Perhaps the answer was simple. Greed is a powerful force. When you are drowning in debt, when you see an easy solution in front of you, when someone like Jason is whispering in your ear that everything is fine, that your mother won't even notice, that it is for her own good anyway, Maybe it is easy to convince yourself that you are doing the right thing. But it wasn't right. It was never right. And now we both would have to live with the consequences. The day of the trial dawned cold and rainy. Sarah stopped by my house at 7 in the morning to pick me up. "How are you?" she asked while we drove toward the courthouse. "Terrified," I admitted. "I don't know if I can do this." "You can," she said with conviction. "You already went through the hardest part, Eleanor. Waking up in that hospital and discovering what had happened. Fighting to get your life back. This is just the last step." The courtroom was fuller than I expected. Some of my friends had come to support me, including Margaret, who was sitting in the front row and gave me an encouraging smile when I walked in. Some former colleagues from school were also present. On the other side of the aisle, I saw Harper for the first time in months. She had lost weight drastically. Her face was pale, with deep circles under her eyes. She was wearing a simple suit, very different from the designer clothes she used to wear. When our eyes met, she opened her mouth as if she were going to say something, but I looked away quickly. The judge, Judge Carla Rodriguez, was a stern woman of about 50. She read the charges with a clear and firm voice: aggravated fraud, forgery, financial abuse against an elderly person. Each charge carried years of potential prison time. The defense attorney, Attorney Paul Mendoza, began his opening argument painting Harper as a worried daughter who made errors in judgment. My client loved her mother, still loves her. She saw her mother aging, living alone, and worried. Maybe she went too far in her attempts to protect her. Maybe she made wrong decisions. But that isn't a crime. It is misguided love. Misguided love? The words infuriated me. There was nothing of love in drugging me and robbing me. Fernanda, the prosecutor, was more direct. What we have here is not love. It is pure and simple greed. Harper Vance was bankrupt. She owed more than $150,000. She saw her mother's condo as the solution to her financial problems, and she conspired with other people to steal that condo using fraudulent means and keeping her mother sedated to stop her from reacting. That is not love. That is a felony. The witnesses were called one by one. Dr. Reynolds, my original doctor, testified that the surgery was routine and without complications, that there was no medical reason to keep me sedated for 3 days, that he was alarmed when he found out about the dementia diagnosis because I had always been his most lucid and active patient. Dr. Patricia Joyce testified about her evaluation. Mrs. Eleanor Vance does not present any sign of cognitive decline. Her results on the tests were exceptional for her age. She is fully capable of making her own decisions. Brenda, the nursing assistant who had tried to help me, testified about the day she questioned my medication. I knew something was wrong. The amount of sedative she was receiving made no sense for the procedure that had been done. When I mentioned it, her daughter became very aggressive with me. Margaret testified about the day she visited me and realized I was being kept in an altered state. Eleanor has been my best friend for 30 years. I know her, and the woman in that hospital bed wasn't Eleanor. She was being drugged more than necessary. It was obvious. Then it was my turn. I stood up and walked to the witness stand, my legs shaking. I took the oath to tell the truth and sat down. Fernanda approached with a kind and encouraging smile. "Mrs. Vance, can you tell us in your own words what happened?" And I told it. Everything. The simple surgery that turned into days of sedation. Waking up confused, disoriented, not knowing what had happened. Discovering my daughter had sold my condo. The documents I signed without fully understanding, under the influence of alcohol. The attempt to put me in a nursing home against my will. "How did you feel when you discovered what your daughter had done?" Fernanda asked. I took a deep breath. Betrayed, violated, as if all my love, all my sacrifice for her throughout life had meant nothing. As if I were just a source of money for her. "Had you given your daughter any indication that you would like to sell your condo?" "Never. I love that condo. I bought it with my own money after years of saving. It was my security, my future. And did you agree to sign the power of attorney, giving her total control over your assets?" "Not in the way it was used. Harper told me it was just a precaution in case something happened during the surgery. I was nervous. We had drunk wine, and I trusted her. She is my daughter." Or she was. My voice broke on that last word. Fernanda gave me a moment to compose myself. How is your life now, Mrs. Vance? I am rebuilding. My condo is slowly being furnished again. But I lost much more than furniture. I lost family photos that can't be replaced. Letters my late husband Javier wrote me. Harper's baptism dress that I kept. 40 years of memories, thrown away like trash. I wiped the tears running down my face, and I lost my daughter. That is what hurts the most. Thank you, Mrs. Vance, Fernanda said softly, returning to her desk. Then, Harper's lawyer stood up for cross-examination. He approached with a sympathetic smile that immediately put me on alert. Mrs. Vance, you and your daughter had a close relationship, correct? Yes, or at least I thought so. You raised Harper alone after her father abandoned you. Yes, that must have been difficult, financially and emotionally. It was. But it was my responsibility. I loved her. And Harper was always a good daughter? Did she always worry about you? I hesitated. Where was he going with this? When she was younger, yes. But in recent years you grew apart? She got busy with her life. It is normal. Mrs. Vance, is it true that you had some episodes of forgetfulness in the months before the surgery? I frowned. Not that I recall. He smiled, as if I had proven his point. You don't recall? Interesting. Witnesses will say that you mentioned a few times forgetting where you had put your keys or what you had gone into a room to do. That happens to everyone eventually, I retorted. It doesn't mean dementia. Of course not. But it could have worried your daughter. Isn't that so? A 60-year-old mother, living alone, beginning to show small signs of forgetfulness. Objection. Fernanda stood up. The defense is speculating. Mrs. Vance has already been evaluated by specialists who confirmed her full cognitive capacity. Sustained, said the judge. Attorney Mendoza, stick to the facts, please. He nodded, but continued. Mrs. Vance, when you signed the power of attorney, were you conscious? Yes, but... And were you in your home? In a familiar environment? Yes. But we had been drinking. But you were not being physically coerced, correct? No one was threatening you? No. But my daughter manipulated the situation. Manipulated or just suggested a sensible precaution before a surgery? He didn't wait for my answer. Mrs. Vance, is it true that you have substantial savings besides the condo? I have some money put away, yes. How much, approximately? Sarah stood up. Your Honor, what is the relevance of this? I am going to allow it, said the judge. But get to the point, Attorney Mendoza. You have approximately $300,000 in investments and savings, correct? Something like that. So, even with the sale of the condo, you wouldn't be destitute. You would have substantial resources to live comfortably. I felt anger rising. That money is for my retirement, for emergencies. It is not for my daughter to spend paying her debts. But if your daughter was genuinely worried about your safety, wouldn't it be reasonable to think about selling a large apartment and putting you in a place with care? Not without my consent. My voice came out louder than I intended. Not drugging me and keeping me sedated while she does everything behind my back. He raised his hands in a gesture of appeasement. I understand you are upset. But is it possible that your daughter, perhaps clumsily, was really trying to help you? I looked directly at him. If she wanted to help me, she would have talked to me. She would have been honest about her financial difficulties. I would have helped her, like I always did. But she didn't want help. She wanted my money and was willing to rob me to get it. There was a moment of silence. Then he returned to his desk. No more questions. When I went back to my seat, I was shaking. Sarah squeezed my hand. You did very well, she whispered. The trial continued for 2 more days. Jason testified, describing how he had planned the scheme with Harper, how she had come to him asking for help to resolve the mom thing, how he had suggested the network of shell companies to disguise the sale. She knew exactly what she was doing, he said. She didn't have any doubt. She was just worried about doing it fast before her mother realized. Dr. Sterling, already convicted, testified about how Harper had contacted him. She offered me $10,000 to sign an evaluation saying her mother had dementia. She said it was for her mother's own good, that she needed care but refused to accept it. I needed the money, so I agreed. It was wrong. I know that now. Finally, it was Harper's turn to testify. She walked up to the witness stand with slow steps, as if every movement cost her immense effort. Her lawyer guided her through a carefully constructed narrative. Yes, she had debts. Yes, she had lost her job. Yes, she was desperate. But her main concern, she insisted, was me. My mother was aging, living alone. I worried. And when Jason suggested that maybe it would be better if she were in a place with care, it seemed logical to me. And the power of attorney? Asked her lawyer. I explained everything to her. I said it was a precaution. She agreed. She signed. Maybe I should have waited for a moment when she was more alert, but I didn't think it was a problem. She is my mother. I trusted that she trusted me. And the sedation in the hospital. The doctors said it was necessary. I am not a doctor. I trusted them. And the sale of the condo? I believed I was doing the right thing. The money would be used to pay for her care in the nursing home. There would be plenty left over to ensure she had everything she needed. Her voice broke. I never wanted to hurt her. I love my mother. Then, Fernanda stood up for cross-examination. She showed no mercy. Miss Harper, how much did you owe when this scheme started? I don't know exactly. $153,000, according to the documents. That seems very exact for not knowing. Harper didn't answer. And your apartment? You were about to be evicted, correct? I was behind on rent, yes. 3 months behind. How much time did you have before the final eviction? 2 weeks. So you had 2 weeks to come up with more than $15,000 or you would be on the street. That is a strong motivation, isn't it? You were desperate, but desperate enough to drug your mother and steal her condo? It wasn't like that. Fernanda picked up a paper. I'm going to read a message you sent to Jason Miller 3 weeks before your mother's surgery. I can't take it anymore. I need money now. My mother has a condo worth almost $1 million. There has to be some way I can access that. Her response? Harper was pale. I was frustrated, venting. She will never agree to sell. It needs to look like it is for her own good. Maybe if she were sick, confused, I could get a power of attorney. Are those your words? Silence. Miss Harper, you planned this. You premeditated robbing your mother. It wasn't an error in judgment. It wasn't misguided love. It was a calculated and cold crime. I needed the money, Harper burst out finally. You don't understand what it is to be drowning in debt, not knowing how you are going to pay next month's rent. My mother had so much and didn't need it all. She lives a simple, cheap life. That condo was too big for her. The money was sitting there unused, I thought. I thought it wouldn't make any difference to her. But it did make a difference, didn't it? She lost her home. She lost her belongings. She lost her memories. She lost her daughter. Harper was crying now, tears running freely. I am so sorry. I am so sorry, Mom. She looked directly at me for the first time. I know I ruined everything. I know you are never going to forgive me. But I love you. I have always loved you. I just made terrible decisions. I know that now. I looked at her, my daughter, crying, broken, repentant. Part of me, the part that was still a mother, wanted to run to her, hug her, tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't. Because it wouldn't be okay. She had betrayed me in the deepest way possible. And repentance after getting caught didn't erase what she had done. I looked away. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. They were the longest 7 hours of my life. Sitting in that waiting room with Sarah, Margaret, and a few other friends, every minute seemed like an eternity. What do you think is going to happen? I asked Sarah. The evidence is overwhelming, she said. The messages, the testimonies, the timeline. But juries are unpredictable, especially in family cases. Sometimes they find it hard to believe a daughter could do something like that to her own mother. Finally, they called us back. The jury had reached a verdict. My heart was beating so fast I felt everyone could hear it. Harper entered, accompanied by her lawyer. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, her hands shaking visibly. The jury foreman stood up, a man of about 50 looking like a professor. He held the paper with the verdict and read, "In the case of the state versus Harper Vance, on the charges of aggravated fraud, we, the jury, find her guilty. I felt as if all the air had left my lungs. Guilty. My daughter was officially a criminal. On the charge of forgery of a private document, we find the defendant guilty. Harper sobbed, her body shaking. On the charge of financial abuse against an elderly person, we find the defendant guilty. 3 guilty verdicts. On all charges. The judge banged the gavel. Sentencing will be determined in 30 days. Until then, the defendant will remain on probation with electronic monitoring. She looked at Harper. Miss Vance, you had multiple opportunities to do the right thing, to confess, to ask for sincere forgiveness before getting caught. But you chose to lie, manipulate, and try to get away with it. That will weigh on my sentencing decision. Outside the courtroom, I was surrounded by my friends. Everyone congratulated me, said justice had been done. But I didn't feel victory. I felt only emptiness. Eleanor, I heard a voice behind me. It was Harper. She had managed to break away from her lawyer and ran toward me before security could stop her. Please, just give me a minute. Sarah began to intervene, but I raised my hand. It's okay. Harper and I stepped a little away from the group. She was crying, her face stained with makeup. Mom, I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I ruined everything, but I wanted you to know that my regret is real. Not because I got caught, but because I realized what I did to you, what I took from you. You took everything from me, Harper, I replied, my voice surprisingly calm. My home, my memories, my dignity, my daughter. I know, and I will carry that for the rest of my life. She wiped her tears. I am not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry. Truly. I looked at her for a long moment, trying to see the girl I raised in that broken woman in front of me. Harper, I hope you use the time in prison to think about who you want to be, because the person you became. I don't recognize her. Me neither, she whispered. It was the last time we spoke. 30 days later, she was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. She didn't appeal. She simply accepted her sentence and disappeared into the prison system. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life slowly. My condo began to look like a home again. Not the same as before, it would never be the same, but a new home, with new furniture, new decorations, new memories being created. I started doing volunteer work, teaching math to adults in a literacy program. It was rewarding. It gave me purpose. It reminded me why I became a teacher in the first place. Not for the money, but for the joy of seeing someone understand something new. I made new friends through volunteering. People who knew nothing about my past, about my daughter, about what had happened. To them, I was just Eleanor, a retired teacher who liked to help. Margaret continued to be my rock. We had dinner together twice a week, watched movies, traveled to the beach a few weekends. She never pressured me to talk about Harper, but she was always there when I needed to vent. Anna Bravo, my therapist, helped me process the trauma. You went through a deep betrayal, she told me in a session. And family betrayal is the worst of all, because it violates what should be the safest relationship we have. It will take time for you to fully trust someone again. She was right. I discovered that I found it hard to accept help, even from close friends, always suspicious of ulterior motives, always wondering what people really wanted. It was a form of protection, I understood that, but also a prison. Little by little, I learned to lower my defenses again. To trust, although with caution. To believe that not all people were like Harper, that most people were genuinely good. A year after the trial, I received a letter. It was from Harper, from prison. I stared at the envelope for an hour before daring to open it. Inside, pages and pages in her handwriting, telling me about her life in prison, about the classes she was taking, about the therapy she was receiving. I am learning about myself, Mom, she wrote. About the decisions I made, the values I lost somewhere along the way. I am not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I am trying to become a better person. The person you tried to raise. I didn't reply to the letter. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. But I kept it, in a drawer, together with the few photos of her I could recover or reconstruct. Because, in the end, she was still my daughter. I still loved her, in a complicated and painful way. But love didn't mean I had to allow her back into my life. Love didn't mean I had to forgive the unforgivable. Today, at 62 years old, I am rebuilt. Not the same person I was before. That woman died in that hospital room. But a stronger, wiser, more cautious version. I learned that family is not just blood. It is choice. The people who choose to stay by your side, who support you without wanting anything in return, who celebrate your victories and hold you up in defeats. That is your true family. I learned that you can love someone and still establish boundaries. That forgiveness isn't mandatory, no matter what society says. That your peace of mind is worth more than maintaining toxic relationships, even with relatives. I learned that being a senior doesn't mean being invisible or powerless. That 60 years isn't being old. It isn't being incompetent. It isn't being disposable. That I have rights. I have a voice. I have value. And I learned that surviving isn't enough. I deserve to thrive. I deserve joy. I deserve a full life, even after everything that happened. So that is what I am doing. Living. Not just existing in the shadow of what was done to me, but really living. Making plans. Making new friendships. Even considering adopting a dog, something I always wanted but Harper always said was too much work. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 62 years old. I am a retired teacher, a survivor of family financial abuse, and someone who refused to be a victim of her own life. If you are going through something similar, if someone in your family is trying to manipulate you, steal from you, treat you as if your competence and dignity didn't matter simply because you are aging, please, keep this in mind. You have rights, you have value, you have strength. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Not your children, not your grandchildren, not that voice in your head telling you that you should forgive because they are family. Protect yourself. Fight for yourself. And remember, you are not alone. There are people who will support you, attorneys who will defend you, systems that exist to protect you. Use them. Don't be ashamed. Don't feel guilty. You didn't do anything wrong by trusting someone who should be trustworthy. And know that, on the other side of that battle, there is life. There is a new beginning. There is the possibility of joy again. You deserve it. We all deserve it.